Okay, hello and welcome everyone to our event today, the Barnbow Lasses with author Tom Palmer and the Leeds School Library Service. This is a question and answer session for Leeds schools who've taken part in Tom's three-part classroom read that was set in World War I in Leeds. So hello, Tom, over to you.
Hello, and thank you very much for having me on, and thank you to all you schools for joining us. And we hope you've enjoyed the Barnbow Lasses story. And if you remember from chapter 2, Jazz reads an article online called "Remembering the Barnbow Tragedy" by Louise Birch, and this is Louise who's with us today.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you heard about Barnbow and what inspired you to write this story, just while we wait for people to put questions in the question box?
Yeah, definitely. It was working with Leeds Schools Library Service that we wanted to come up with an idea for a story that we could write about the First World War, but set in Leeds. And I'm from Leeds, and I knew of the Barnbow Lasses, but I didn't know nearly enough. I knew about the memorial and I'd heard the story, but I really wanted to write a story about it because I do spend my time writing stories about men in war, and I'm very conscious that although there are major female characters in my books, the people are actually doing the stuff that we're remembering them for, particularly today on Remembrance Day, are men. And so I wanted to write about the Barnbow Lasses because they were serving their country, doing dangerous things, and as you know, if you've read the story, 35 of them were killed on the 5th of December 1916, and we felt together it would be really good to write a story about that. And then I needed resources. I needed to understand how to get the information I needed, and the internet is great. The internet is amazing to find stuff out, but the actual, I've found that when I'm researching my books, the best place to go is the library. And since I was 17, I've always used Leeds Central Library, particularly the reference library. And it's really, we're here today, and it's really quite emotional for me being here because this was a really important part of my life. As I might have told some of you before, I struggled with reading when I was younger, and eventually I got into reading through my love of football, and then I started to study, and I came to Leeds Reference Library a lot because when I studied A-levels later on in life, when I was sort of 20, 21, and while I was doing that, my dad was really ill, and it was quite difficult. He was at home, and it was quite difficult to study at home. So I used to come, most days, I used to come to Leeds Reference Library and work here for a bit so I could get my work done using the resources of the library. So it's lovely to be here doing that because my writing career and me being interested in reading started in this library, this building we're in now. And so it's lovely that as I wrote this story, as I wrote the Barnbow Lasses, if you remember the top of it there, that I got the resources to research it here. I did go on the internet, but I also found documents, books, and photographs on the Leodis website, for instance, which has loads of photos of old Leeds. And I used all that to write the story, and it was brilliant. And it was lovely to be coming back to do it. I'll stop going on about that now, but it's really, I think it's really important.
Would you like us to start with some questions then?
Let's do it, yes.
Okay, a lot of people are very, very interested in why you became a writer. So we're going to start with Woodlesford Primary School. How old were you when you started writing books?
I started writing as a hobby when I was about 20. So I started reading when I was 17, writing as a hobby when I was roughly 20, trying to get published. And my first book, which was this one, first children's book, was published when I was 40. So it took me 20 years to get from wanting to be an author to actually getting published. And as I've told the schools this week that I've been to visit, if you really want something, don't give up. Although it took me 20 years, I love it. I've got a job that makes me really happy. And it's because I didn't give up is the main reason I actually got published in the first place.
Okay, who inspired you to become a writer?
Well, different people. So my mum, by getting me into reading, this building we're in now, absolutely, because once I started to love reading, I couldn't afford to buy all the books I wanted to read, but I could come here, look at them in the reference library, but also borrow books from downstairs. I live near Oakwood, and Oakwood Library was good, but I wanted sort of more of a range. So I used to come to the big central library and borrow books. So that was a big inspiration to me. But the main person was my wife, because she knew I wanted to be a writer, but she kind of knew I didn't have time to write either. So she said, right, for a year, you can work part-time. So I used to work at the library in Bradford. I gave up working in the bookshop where I was working. I just worked part-time and I wrote my first book. And that, for me, not just having the time to write, but having someone believe in me enough to make me think, hang on, she believes in me, or my wife believes in me enough to let me not pay any of the bills for a year. Like, I've got to believe in myself now, and that was wonderful. So my wife definitely is like up there with my mum and like the librarians of Leeds.
Cool. So yeah, Springbank Primary also asked what made you want to be an author. So unless you have anything else to add to that.
Just loving reading. Loving reading made me want to be an author, and it was that led to me becoming an author.
Cool. We've also been asked, obviously, how old were you? But I think you've answered that one. But here's a good one. What gives you inspiration for stories?
Different things. So with the Barnbow Lasses, it was very much being from Leeds, knowing a little bit about this not very well known story about Leeds, although I know a lot of you already knew about it watching, but sort of like the things that are important to me. Like I really like reading stories that are set where we're from, where we live. And I'm from Leeds. I live a bit further away now in Halifax, and I love reading and writing stories that are set in the places that I'm from and that I live. And the same goes with other books. It tends to be things I'm really into. So Armistice Runner's about a girl who's a runner, because I used to do a lot of running with my daughter. We got a dog a few years ago. I thought I'm going to write a book that features my dog, and then other ideas will be my wife's ideas. So she heard this story about these children who survived the Holocaust, and she said, you've got to write about this. And so we do talk about it, sat on our doorstep having a cup of tea, about what I'm going to write next.
Cool. One about the Barnbow book, I think, which is, what is your favourite part of the book? And that's from 6N, who is a class, I think.
That's a good question. I've got to think that. It's the end. I didn't like, so if you've not read the end, I won't mention it, I suppose, but I didn't expect the end to happen. I knew Edith was going to be there, but I didn't think the other thing was going to happen. And it just, I don't know, it just came into my head. I didn't plan it. It wasn't my idea. Although it came into my head, it wasn't really something I thought about. It just, and that end, as those at St. Teresa's know, I found that quite emotional, that end. And I managed to read it on the video that I did, that most of you have watched. But yesterday at St. Teresa's, I got a bit of help. So thank you again for helping me with that, because I find when I'm writing stories, I get emotional. I write about emotional things, and I like feeling emotional when I'm writing stories and reading stories. So, but sometimes it's hard to read it out loud when it gets a bit too much for me.
Parklands would like to know, how long did it take you to write the book?
So the Barnbow Lasses took about a week to do, a week to do the research and the planning. And I came here to this library where we are now to do a lot of the research, and I did some other research. I read 2 or 3 children's books about what it was like to be a munitionette, like what the Barnbow Lasses were. So I read other authors' interpretations of it, and that was really helpful. Then I looked at lots of photos, and that took about a week of research. And I'd say I did a chapter each day for 3 more days, and then 2 more days of editing, and then it was pretty much 2 weeks, I suppose. Yeah, 2 weeks.
Brilliant. Springbank Primary would like to know, do you prefer writing stories about football or books about war?
Well, that's a good question. I enjoy writing about both, and I tend to alternate. So I'll go history book, football book, history book, football book, just so that I'm changing what I'm doing, which I think is quite refreshing. But when it comes to it, although I love writing about football, writing about war and history is really what I love. And like the book I'm writing at the moment, which I might have told some of you about if I've been into your school this week, is set in Holland. And I'm really lucky. On Sunday, I'm going to Holland to research where my main character lived. And I'm going to a museum in Amsterdam as well to find out about the resistance. And I just love all that research. And so the history books, it's a much richer writing experience for me.
Just to let you know, the questions are coming in thick and fast. We're going to have to
speed
up with these to try and get them all in.
Yeah.
So, Centuries, which book took the longest to write?
The first book took the longest to write because I didn't know what I was doing. I made loads of mistakes and I learned on the job, which is why it took me a year.
Okay, Centuries, who is your favourite character in all the books you have written?
Hello again, Centuries. Thank you again for yesterday. My favourite characters in all of my books is Rocky. Surprisingly, she is the brother of the so-called main character of Roy of the Rovers series, but very quickly she's become a power herself, and now I'm writing books just about her, not about her brother. And she, I don't know what it is, but I'm writing one of hers now, and I just love being with her. She's ace. I just really like her company. I don't know, it's weird, but I do.
No, it's great when a character becomes your friend and you have that connection.
I don't know what she thinks of me, but I really look up to her.
Okay, Manston Year 5, what do you write your stories on? Are you a laptop, typewriter, paper and a bit of pen?
If I had a mirror, I'd show you the laptop. This is the laptop that I write on. I do my planning on, this is such a mess, but I do my planning on paper with Post-it notes and stuff like that, just to get everything down. So that is with a paper and a pen. Generally I'll do it all on the computer because it's easier.
Cool. 60K would like to know, how do you choose your characters' names?
Good question. So often they're based on real people. So in this book, for instance, Glenn, the parachuting dog, and Emil, his handler, were real people. So I used real names with sort of, or sometimes I'll not use real names because this book was about 300 children who survived the Holocaust and came to live in England. And because I was writing about them all and distilling that into 3 main characters, I was careful to use a name that might have been a Jewish Polish person's name in 1939, but wasn't one of the names of the children who actually came. So sometimes I try to use very specific names and sometimes I avoid it. It's kind of fun. Sometimes I put in friends' names. I've got a mate who I occasionally put in the Roy of the Rovers books, like he does a foul and he gets sent off and he shouts at the referee. And so I'll kind of put people in just to have a bit of a laugh. So watch out.
I think it's Fieldhead Carr would like to know, back to Barnbow, how many people were killed in the explosion?
In that explosion, if I'm correct, and I know you know much more about it, Louise, but 35, I believe, were killed on the 5th of December, but another 3 people were killed at other points in other explosions. Is that right?
Yeah, there was. And strangely, there was a couple of cases where a person didn't die for a number of years, but because their injuries were so severe that it was still classed as that was the explosion that did it to them. So we've got a great question here. Hi, Tom. We've loved learning about the Barnbow Lasses this week, but what happened to William Parkin? When did people actually find out about the girl who died, as it was a secret during the war?
With the girl who actually died, I suppose they found out a few years later when it was declassified, didn't they? So I think once the war was over, and then they could talk about it more openly. And William Harkin, he was the man who saved several people on the day, didn't he? There was with this story, because it was, and like William Harkin was very courageous and very brave, and he's in some of the books, and there's a memorial to him as well as there's a remembering to him as well. But with this story, there's one thing I was talking to my daughter, and she talked to me a lot about a lot of books just have male characters in them, and she's kind of also talked to me about how a lot of films, there's been some analysis done on films and books that a lot of when you have a female character, it's often they're talking about men, and there aren't female characters being themselves and not having to talk about or be something to do with the men, and so to be women or girls in their own right. And so because I've discussed this quite intensely with my daughter when discussing my other books, we decided we were going to do this story with no male characters in. And if you actually think back to the whole story, there are no male characters. Even Jazz's dog is female. And I did that to I suppose I did it for my daughter because I'd been educated by her. Is that?
No, that's a great answer. Allerton CE would like to know, if you were not an author, what would you be?
If I wasn't an author, I'd probably be doing what I was doing before. I used to work for libraries. I used to work for Bradford libraries and then libraries all across Yorkshire. I did some work with Leeds libraries back in the day as well, and just trying to promote reading through things like reading groups and poster campaigns and author events. So I'd probably still be doing that, which I loved, but I love even more writing my own books because it's like another level of happiness.
St Barnabas Primary would like to know, do you have any personal connections to the First World War?
Not that I know of. I've got some with the Second World War from some of my relatives, but my family's quite like that. It's what's the best word for it? Well, basically, I was fostered and adopted when I was very, very little, and then my family was quite fragmented, so I don't know loads, and then there's no one really around to ask. But there are some stories from the Second World War, but they're not. What I tend to do is I go to the Imperial War Museum website, and if I want to write a book about sailors in the Second World War, I will listen to 100 hours of sailors talking about what it was like in the Arctic convoys, and that's where I get my ideas from. However, the next book I might be writing might be about someone who's evading capture or escaping from a prison camp in Second World War and evading capture. And my mum's great uncle or something like that, I can't remember, he did that and he actually wrote a book about it. So I might do that. So I might be able to have something I can actually say is family related.
Cool. Woodlesford Primary, what is your favourite book that you have written?
My favourite book I have written is somewhere under here. Where's it gone? Completely. Oh, here it is. This one, because it's about a girl called Lily who is a fell runner, and it's based loosely on my daughter, and it's kind of it's like when my daughter was doing lots of racing, she's kind of packed it in now and running. We used to spend a lot of time together driving to races in North Yorkshire in the Lake District, excuse me, and so I love that book because it reminds me of that happy time.
Cool. Which book was the hardest to write? And that's from Parklands.
The hardest to write was this one. This is about 300 children who survived the Holocaust. So if you know what I'm talking about, you understand what I mean, like some events that happened in the Second World War. And it's a true story based on these children who came to live in this country by Lake Windermere, as you can see in the background. But one of them, like the main character, is based on someone called Eric Hirsch, and he lives in Leeds, he lives in Harewood. So, and what I had to do while writing this was find out what happened to these children, what happened to their parents. Did they see what happened to their parents? Very, very, very difficult, horrible, dark events that are very upsetting. And that was really hard to write, and it kind of stayed with me and kind of did my head in a bit. So it was good to write a football book straight after that, because it was hard. It's hard when you find out when people have suffered and try and do them justice in telling their story. Okay.
St Barnabas now, are there any authors that you look up to?
Yes, loads. I mean, loads of authors. Authors like Anthony Horowitz and Rosemary Sutcliffe, children's authors. I really look up to authors. I really admire authors from round here. So authors like Emily Bronte and Tony Harrison, and or like authors that I really love who are from Leeds or the West Yorkshire area, because it really made me feel like I could be an author because they were from the same place as me, I did have this idea you
Yeah.
couldn't be an author if you're from around here, and that you had to be from London or something. So I look up to loads of authors. Like I finish about half the books I start, I finish. And the ones I finish, I really, you know, I think the authors take you to a different world, to different places, different times, and you learn what it was like or what it is like for other people. And I think that's the power of books. You get inside the heads of people who have suffered or done, you know, remarkable things, and that's what I love about reading most.
Cool. Strawberry Fields now, back to Barnbow, is any part of the factory still there?
As far as I know, and Louise can correct me if I'm wrong, there are some bits where there are sort of the foundations or the lower bricks of some of the buildings over in the fields, like at the end of some track. I've not seen them. Is that right? Yeah,
I think so. I think it's one of those things, if a helicopter went over and took a photo, you'd be able to make it out, but as you walk across the field, you would never know. No, but there are those the streets that you read about, like Edith Sykes Drive and all the other streets that are listed in the story. They're all there, and all those streets and roads are named after the Barnbow Lasses, which I think is wonderful. And really, I wanted that to be the beginning of the story, like how to link jazz to her past, to the past of her area. Yeah. If you could write any other stories, it says about World War II, but might open it up and say World War I or World War II, what would you write about? And that's from Broadgate.
Good question. I'd probably write, all my books have been based in Europe, mostly France, because that's where a lot of these things happened in. But also, like the First and Second World War, they took place in other places. And the book I'm working, I've just been asked to write a book, which as long as I can write it well enough, will get published. And it's about what happened during the Pacific. So the war to do with Japan and more to do with the United States. And there's a story about, I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to give away. There's a story about an animal, which I'm going to be writing a story about, that's to do with the Second World War in the Pacific. That's all I'm allowed to say.
Yeah. Okay. Manston Primary now. We liked the edit you put in the last chapter. How many times do you edit your books?
That's a very good question, and thank you for the tip. Because I found I read the first chapter at Manston, and I learned a really interesting piece of information from one of the teachers there, who's kindly sent me some material. So thank you for that. And I changed a bit in chapter 3 to do with the Danger Woman, which I knew nothing about, who wore red, and put her in. So I, even with one of these stories, because it's not been published yet, I could change it, which was wonderful to do. But generally with an edit, I'll do at least 10 edits of each book. I'll go through it again and again. I'll go through for big things like character, setting, plot, structure, but then when I've done that and got all that in the right places, I'll go through and change sentences and edit words, and even like the sound of the language, just to make sure if someone was going to read it aloud, which I do when I'm editing it, it just makes it all the better. And my editor absolutely hammers me, and she's been on to me. She wants to talk to me this afternoon, so this afternoon when I get home, she's going to call me and tell me all the things that I could do better.
That's her job. I'm sure she loves your writing. But.
Yeah, but she's my books. They wouldn't even be published if it wasn't for her. And she absolutely. It's not, an author doesn't do it on their own. You get help from lots of from librarians, like who can find you the information you need in the Leeds Central Library, to my editor. And like this morning, I had a chat with a school about my latest book that I'm writing now. They read it and they gave me loads of feedback, and they said, like, 3 of the characters, they don't know who they are or what they're about or what the point of them is. And I was like, oh, they're right. I just left them hanging as like people, like people in a room are just at the back, you don't know who they are or why they're there. And I need to develop those characters. And thanks to the editorial advice of this group of 10-year-olds, I'm going to be able to improve it.
Cool. Okay, St. Teresa's here. Being a Leeds United fan, have you ever considered writing about the War of the Roses?
No, I've not. I suppose I could, but I don't know, because we lost, didn't we? So I'm not sure I want to go into that. I'm not, maybe I don't. Yeah, one answer. Another answer to that is I don't know very much about it, and I should learn about it. So I'll tell you what. I'm going to resolve. I'm going to read about it and try and understand it better. And maybe I will. So thank you for the prompt.
Okay. Let's see what else. What tips do you have for young writers?
Definitely write about what you love, what you're passionate about. I write things about my dog and my daughter and football, and I write about what I love, and because of that I'm much more into it. Whereas if I'm writing about stuff I'm not into, just don't enjoy it as much, and it won't come across as good writing. So definitely write about what you're interested in. Read broadly and read what, go use your library, because you can get a library book out and you can read it and you can think, oh dear, 10 pages, and you're thinking that I'm not really into this, and you can put it back. You can pick another, because libraries, they're free. You can borrow them. You don't have to finish them if you're not enjoying them. And so I definitely say read really broadly. And as you read, you become a better writer naturally. And then my other advice would be, don't give up. It took me 20 years to get published, but it's worth it. And if you give up, it's over.
Cool. And I will just second that as a librarian. If you're really not enjoying a book and you're not being forced to read it, don't finish it. Take it back, get a new book. The last thing you want to do is lose your love of reading because you got stuck on one book. Right. So Woodlesford Primary, what websites do you use for your research? So pens at the ready, everyone. These are the good websites that Tom uses.
Well, for Barnbow, the Leodis website. So that is that leodis.com. .org, sorry. Is photographs of Leeds, isn't it? And it's in through history, and it's amazing. You can go to the parts of your city and see what it used to look like, and so that is wonderful, especially when you're writing locally. But my go-to website every time is the Imperial War Museum, and you can type in, like I typed in like D-Day dogs, or parachuting dogs, or D-Day paratroopers and stuff like that, and I could listen to those people who were there talking about what it was like. And I made loads of notes in my notebooks, as I do, and I just took all the notes and I got all their stories, real stories from that, which is basically what you've got here in the library. You've got loads of resources that you can get the voice of the past. Whatever you want is here, and if not, they can probably get it for you to help you write your stories. But also the Imperial War Museum's got loads of photos, so you've got photos of sailors, maps that might be useful, as does Leodis, and then photographs of what it was like to be involved in the Merry picture of those bomb holders. So like photos are really useful too. But so there are loads of websites that are useful, but writing about history, it's just the go-to one every time is Imperial War Museum. It's amazing.
Brilliant.
In fact, to the point, sorry to interrupt you, to the point that this book, Arctic Star, is dedicated to the Imperial War Museum, is because they helped me so much.
Brilliant. And thank you for the plug for leodis.net, our photographic archive. I run that website, and there are loads of photographs of Barnbow on there, so you can see the sheds that they talk about, in the buildings, and the women as well.
And then now, other areas in the city, it's just brilliant.
Now, a lot of people have asked this same question, so I'm going to have to say it. This one's from Allerton CV, and it was, what books did you enjoy reading as a child? What are your favourite books to read?
Now I like historical fiction and biography and all sorts of stuff. I'm reading a book about sort of a political book at the moment, so I read really broadly. When I was your age, when I was like under 16, I didn't have any favourite books. I really didn't like reading, and struggled with reading, but what I did like to read was the Yorkshire Evening Post, all the stuff about Leeds United, and I would read magazines like Shoot and Match and Roy the Rovers, and I would read about football, which I loved. And to be honest, I didn't really feel like it was proper reading, but it is whatever you read, and it could be a newspaper, a website, a magazine, a comic, anything, and all those things are available in your libraries. It's reading, it is all reading, and if you're enjoying it, fantastic. Why worry about whether it's the right thing to read or not, because it clearly is.
A really interesting question from Gilderson Primary. Have you ever faced judgment for becoming a writer? Ever had any sort of negative comments, or anyone ever gone, why do you want to do that?
What a good question.
Yeah.
Judgment. Yeah. Yes, I have. One person in my family, like I've mentioned, my wife was really positive and supported me and encouraged me. There was one person in my life, quite high up in my family, who used to take the mickey out of me for writing, and because I clearly wasn't the right kind of person who'd be a writer, because I wasn't this and I wasn't that, and I found that really upsetting, and it did sort of put me off. But I've learned that if people try to bring you down, it's maybe better to spend time with people who are going to lift you up, people who like you, care about you, and want to support you, and help you realize your dreams in the same way that if you've got someone who's a friend or someone in your family who's trying something new and really into it, but feeling a bit uncertain about it, give them support, like encourage them, praise them, like whatever stage they're at, because that's how we all become happier.
Okay, St. Joseph's, and actually quite a few others, would like to know which of your books is the most famous or has been the most successful.
Right, so I've done this. I've talked to a couple of schools about this. So there's 3 different ways. Can we do a poll? Is it too late to set up a poll?
No, I should be able to do a poll. Yeah.
Brilliant. So I've got a new poll.
Question. What's the question?
The question is, I've got 3. So I'll try and do it more simply. Which is the best way of judging the success of a book? Right. Let's see if this works. Is this all right to spring this on?
Yeah. So what is the best way to judge the success of a book?
And there's 3 different ways, and these are my 3 books that have been successful in different ways. Option 1 is sales. This book has sold the most copies. So sales is one way of judging whether a book is the most successful. The next one is the number of prizes it's won. So Armistice Runner has won 10 children's book prizes. So prizes. And the final one is reviews. After the War's had the best reviews. So we're going to set up a poll now, I think, if I've not sprung that on you horribly.
No, that's fine. I'm just typing reviews. What will happen is I will spring the poll. You'll have about 10-20 seconds to reply. So everybody, fingers at the ready. So the most reviews. Okay, so I'll save that, and I'll try and work out how to launch that. I may have to launch that in just a moment.
Right, no problem.
I don't know
Thank you. Sorry if I sprung that on you.
No, that's fine. Oh, here we go. Launch. Right, your poll has been launched. It's ready. It's out there. The judges, we've had 5 responses so far. I'll let it keep going because we've got 22 participants. So how we're doing? 8 people have answered so far. I'm going to give you 5 more seconds. 5,
that's interesting.
4,
really close.
3, 2, 1. Oh, I'll give you 2 more seconds because we're nearly full amount of answers. So that's 20 replied. We've only got 2 more schools waiting. Okay, I'm going to end it there then with 20. So there you go. Reviews has won. People think that it's the number of best reviews. Then sales has come second, and the number of prizes has come third.
Right. So by your reckoning, democratically, After the War is my most successful book. So
okay,
very good.
There you
Thanks
go.
very much.
That was brilliant. You were all involved in that one. Okay, I'll get back to the question now. I'll just warn you, we've got about 5-6 minutes left, but we've got 80 odd questions, so we won't be able to do. We won't be able to do all of them. I don't think we'll get them all, but we'll sort of do what we can do.
We'll do loads.
Broadgate, can you write a book about the Blitz evacuees? Is that something you'd be interested in?
It could be, yeah, definitely. And I'd be really interested, especially to write about evacuees from Leeds, if that was the case, because I don't know much about it.
Okay. Have you ever been in another country and had a new idea for a book, or travelled abroad to research an idea? So you did say a few of your books are based in Europe. Have you ever gone to visit the sites, and that's from
Yeah. So I've been to the D-Day beaches, and I've been to the First World War trenches. I've set books in Russia, the Arctic, and Ghana, and I've been to those places. And I think in going to those places, you learn stuff you would never have known if you'd not been to them. So I think it's really good to go to a place you're writing about, if you can.
Cool. I really like this
Obviously,
question
it's not always
from
easy.
I really like this question from Harewood. You included a ghost character in the Barnbow Lasses. Do you believe in ghosts?
Do I believe in ghosts? No. Although, weirdly, I did have a ghostly experience with someone I met at the bottom of this building. There's a cafe at the bottom of this building. So I did have a ghostly experience with someone once, and we're really close to it. So that's quite spooky in itself.
Okay.
But I don't. But I quite like the idea of it.
Do you listen to music when writing? Is it something that helps? Okay. Do you have any tips for what do you immerse yourself in when you're writing?
Silence is good, but I can do. I mean, I can work on trains and I can work in cafes, but and if I'm doing editing, I work in the same office as my wife. But if I'm doing first drafting, I tend to do it on my own because I've got to keep things in my head, and I'm too tempted to have a chat with my wife.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than having your train of thought vanish because someone goes, "Do you want a cup of tea?"
Yeah.
So here's a really good one. Do you consider your books to be fiction or non-fiction?
Good question. They are definitely fiction. However, particularly this one and some of the others, all the scenes are based on the testimony, the words of people who've experienced those things. So it is very, very, very rooted in the truth, but it is fiction. Okay,
right. I'm just wandering through the questions. I think we may have actually answered all of them. There were quite a few duplicates, but obviously they can't see the chat, so they don't know. Great questions. But some really good questions. What I will do is I will type these questions up and I'll send them to Tom. And if there's any that he feels he didn't get the chance to answer, he can always answer them. Okay, so thank you. I am going to bring things to a close now. I want to thank everyone for taking part. It's been brilliant. We've had really, really good attendance. Some of brilliant questions here, and a huge thank you to Tom for shining a light on this hidden part of Leeds history. Thank you. Before I throw you all out, one final question because it's a good one. Have you ever written anything autobiographical?
It's a good question. I suppose not directly, no, because no, it's fictional. But like for instance, the ghost thing I mentioned that happened with someone I met downstairs here. The ghosty thing does go into Ghost Stadium, my book, and Rocky's experience. Her dad is very ill and dying, and that happened to my dad, exactly what happens to her dad. And so I use things I know about emotionally or physically, and I do put them into books because if I know what it's like to have had a very ill dad, and it's probably a good thing that I write about. It's good for me to keep me, happy, but also if other people go through these things, it's good to write a book about it so other people can understand it and it might help them. So I definitely do write autobiographically, but not autobiography, if that makes sense.
Okay. Well, a lot of people are saying now thank you in the chat, so I will pass that on. I'm going to end the recording, but if before people leave, if they could put their name, if they've got any message for Tom, put it in there, I'll pass it along. But also if they could leave the name of your school and how many people have been sat and taking part in today, that would be great. So I'll end the recording there. Thank you, Tom. Okay.
Thank you.